For 44 years, Varsity Ford in Ann Arbor has been more than just a dealership. We're a family, proudly serving yours. As one of the top volume Ford dealers in the world, we're proof that when you treat people right, they come back, generation after generation. And now we make it easier than ever with complimentary pickup and delivery for both sales and service. So you can buy or service your Ford without leaving home. Varsity Ford, driven by family, built on tradition.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Gridiron Gang, a Detroit News Lions podcast. The Detroit Lions fall to 4-2 with a 30-17 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday Night Football. Lots to talk about out of this one. The offense didn't show up like they needed it to. The defense was noticeably shorthanded with the cornerbacks missing and their safeties completely hobbled. And there was a fight at the end of the game.
Yeah,
so we'll dive into all of that. I'm Nolan Bianchi. With me, as always, is Richard Silva. I don't know where Bob Winowski is, but I think he's around this building somewhere.
Somewhere. If we look hard enough, we'll find him.
Yeah. But we probably won't.
He's not happy with us that it's raining currently and that we parked pretty far away, and he's not pleased with you specifically that you chose to park far away.
That I chose to park in the media parking.
Right.
That's where we are. All right. You guys don't want to hear about any of that. The Lions, I'm not really sure where to start here because I think it was kind of a combination of factors that led to tonight's loss, and it was a commanding loss, or I don't know what the word for that is, an emphatic loss in a lot of ways.
Convincing loss?
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It's late, folks. It's 2:30 in the morning Eastern time here. It was a very convincing loss for a number of different reasons. The Lions offense didn't show up like it needed it to. Dan Campbell saying after the game, like we heard many times last year, this was a game where the offense kind of needed to step up and take control and be the reason that they won the game. That was not the case here tonight. They scored just 1 second-half touchdown, 4 second-half possessions. Only one of them leads to scores. 3 of them, they either punt or turn it over on downs. Just not good enough from that unit tonight.
It's weird, right? Because I didn't really know what to do with them in the grades that I do at the News after every game, because it's like Goff was kind of his usual self, and I'd argue that he even made some better throws today than he had to make against the Bengals or against the Browns. Like I think of the touchdown to J-Mo, the pass over the middle of Laporta before that. Like, those were decidedly good throws, hanging in the pocket and like over the middle. The receivers, we'll touch on St. Brown's drop, but I thought the receivers, both the actual receivers and the tight ends, the pass catchers in general, were for the most part good. J-Mo got active again for the first time in a few weeks, and like David Montgomery made some noise as a pass catcher. But in like pivotal moments, it felt like they weren't able to get the job done. So I didn't really know what to do. I'm like, it felt like 90 or 80% of the time this offense got down the field. There was only 8 possessions total, I think, for them or something like that. And probably on half of those, they had a solid drive. But the first one is the greatest example. 15 plays, 61 yards, takes up 10 minutes of game time, and you only get 3 points out of it.
Yeah, this was a game, like you just mentioned, all the high leverage plays and all the breaks went in the Chiefs' way.
Yep.
Some of that included officiating decisions, which, I know there are probably a lot of people at home still really, really mad about a couple different calls tonight. But, I think back to the play you just mentioned. There was the Lions were 4th and goal on the opening drive, 14 plays before that. And this was kind of the hey, we're here, punch you in the mouth. The Lions actually won the toss and elected to receive, which I think was maybe indicative of their mentality tonight. They went out exactly probably how they thought they would, moved the ball all the way downfield, and then controversy arose when Jared Goff, so he shifts over to the left side of the offensive line, then he goes in motion. David Montgomery, who was lined up as the running back in an offset I formation, he takes a direct snap, throws it to Goff on like a little bubble screen. Goff corrals it off of a bobble.
Yeah.
And
St. Brown lays a devastating block.
And plows his way into the end zone for the score. A minute and 14 seconds later, according to the pool report, as Jake Bates is lining up to take his extra point, the officials throw a flag and say that it was actually an illegal shift because Jared Goff did not get set after shifting before he motioned out. So there were 2 different actions on the play. There was the shift to the left side of the line, and then there was the actual motion. Goff, according to the official, was supposed to set and stop for a full second once he declared, I guess, that he was not the quarterback on the play. But he did not do that. The reason that we've been given as to why the flag came in so late was that the officials basically had to convene. Like every official on the play has a different obligation, something different to watch. And what they said was that, after the play happened, they had to all get together and be like, okay, what did you see? This is what I saw, yada, yada, yada. But the interesting thing, though, comes from the dispute of Dan Campbell, who said that the call came from New York, which, of course, is going to bring a lot of controversy with it because illegal motion is not a reviewable play. Yeah. And so just a very confusing and I'd imagine frustrating for fans as well as the Lions, but just a situation that kind of really took the wind out of their sails to begin the game.
And Jared Goff talked about it as well, and you could probably give better insight here because you were at his press conference while I was in the locker room. He talked about it from his understanding. He thought because he didn't actually put his hands under center, he thought he didn't have to stop for a second. Or can you talk about that?
Yeah, so he basically said after the game without actually saying it, like, I think the refs messed up. That's basically what he was getting at. But he basically said, I and every other coach on the coaching staff was under the impression that as long as I didn't put my hands underneath the center, then I wasn't declaring myself a quarterback and I could just motion without getting set. Obviously, the officials saw it differently. There's some like technical language on the illegal motion rule where if a quarterback is in a T formation, then he has to set. But was he in a T formation? Not really. He was in the offset I formation. But basically the official said if he was in a shotgun formation and never would have gone up to the line, it wouldn't have been an issue. But because he did, that is when the problem arose. And honestly, for as good as everybody has explained their side of the story, I think it just leaves me with more questions. And I'm not even saying that from a conspiracy standpoint or that the refs did anything wrong or whatever, but like everybody seems to have a conflicting perspective on the play that we talked to after the game.
Right. Everyone is kind of thinks what they think and thinks the other person was wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's less angry. Like you think of the Cowboys game last year or a few years ago at this point, the big one, the Dan Skipper one, it was almost like an anger after that one where Dan Campbell was like, we told them what we were going to do and they didn't listen, da-da-da. And this time was just almost like, we think we're right, they think they're right, and I don't really know. You touched on that first drive. I mean, it had just about everything, like you said, to win the toss, to want the ball, 15 plays, 61 yards. They had a hook and ladder in there. They had a jumbo play on the very first drive with Tristan Colon as the very first play from scrimmage with Tristan Colon as the extra offensive lineman. We got a JMO attempted hurdle on that drive.
And a guy who was standing straight up and down.
Yeah, which was also it was the most
less than ideal.
Yeah, less than ideal. I saw him running, and I was like, he's not juking.
I saw him too.
Yeah,
we both looked at each other after that play. We were like, we could tell that he was like,
he had one thing on his mind, jumping over that guy. The drive had everything except the touchdown, and I think that kind of is a good description for how this game went for a while.
Yeah, and obviously, like, this is a resilient team. Like, this is not something that, I think there may be some teams in the NFL that you could look at and say, oh, well, that really buried him mentally and they didn't give him a chance, blah, blah, blah. I still fully expected the Lions to have all the capacity to come back and win this game. Dan Campbell and Jared Goff said as much. Like, it didn't impact the result of the game. They still lost by 13 points. That was a 4-point swing. But it is, it's the confidence factor, things like that. But it was also kind of a foreshadowing to what we would see from this team because there were little miscues that spiraled into game-altering like swings. And the other one that comes to mind, and I know we're probably going to touch on this in a second, the Lions are up 10-6 in the second quarter. They get a big fourth down stop on Patrick Mahomes. They're really – the offense is playing reasonably well. The defense is playing reasonably well.
Thomas Harper has a great pass breakup.
Thomas Harper has a great pass breakup on fourth down. Lions get the ball. They string together a few plays, and then they force a 4th and 4 of their own. Ball goes to St. Brown, one of the most sure-handed receivers in the NFL, and he puts it on the carpet. Chiefs take over 3 plays later. So that was one big swing.
Yeah. And
then the thing that made it spiral, Rocky Scene in for the injured cornerbacks, DJ Reed, Taron Arnold, take your pick there. He's called for, defensive pass interference penalty on third down. That might have been a little bit weak, but at the end of the day, he did grab his jersey, and I think that's probably what the ref called. But that goes from, okay, they turn the ball over to, oh, they might get a 3 and out here. Oh, it's Chiefs ball at the 1. Oh, Chiefs score a touchdown. And they go up 13-10. They do not relinquish the lead again for the rest of the game. They score on their first drive out of half, and kind of off and running she goes to go up 20-10.
St. Brown was targeted 10 times. I don't know how many of those he caught.
6.
9. That was the only target that he didn't haul in.
Wow.
In this game. You mentioned the whole the fact that they're resilient, and I do agree because they did bounce back. They were up 10-6 and were driving. You kick a field goal to go up 13-6 into the half, or even score a touchdown to go up by more than 7. They were going well, but then it's like they got hit again, and it's like how many of those little, and by again I mean the St. Brown drop. How many of those things can a team withstand throughout a night? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and the interesting thing was that it was clearly their plan to control as much of the clock as possible, as we witnessed on that opening drive. But then you come on before you even touch the ball in the second half, you're down by 2 scores. So now that kind of takes the running game out of it. Jameer Gibbs, Montgomery was rushing the ball really well. Jameer Gibbs, another high volume, low output day, 17 carries, 65 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. Not what you want to see from him. You do want that to be a lot better. But it took the run game out of the equation. And then that forced Goff to come up throwing on a lot of different plays. And again, he didn't have a bad game. He was 23 for 29, but there were a lot of plays where there was one drive in the second half where they threw a screenplay to Gibbs on 2nd and 10, went for a loss of 2. Then they try a screenplay to JMO on 3rd down. They just don't block it upright, and it goes for another loss. And that was just they kept getting off schedule on offense, behind the sticks and stuff like that. And they just couldn't make up for it. The Chiefs had them where they want them, and then they executed from there. So,
and I don't know if I'm going to use this word right. It's like a dichotomy between the Lions' quick game and the Chiefs' quick game was just one was here and one was here. And by the first here, I mean the Lions were on this end, and the Chiefs were on the better end. I mean, they just
for the audio listeners out there.
Yes, for the audio listeners, they just totally ate the Lions alive. The Lions' secondary alive. The defense as a whole. With that quick game, I think 70%, 69.7%, all but 79 yards, if I did the math right, of Patrick Mahomes' yards came after the catch. They were just, it was screen, it was quick game, it was Travis Kelce shaking free for short and then extending the play. And we saw some in the secondary, particularly some miscommunication issues, I thought as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about right before we started recording. The Lions ultimately 4 penalties for 38 yards. Did the officials have that much of an impact on the game? I think you could dispute whether or not they did. But the thing for the Lions is that the penalties came at the absolute worst time. There was another play. It wasn't as momentum changing, but there was another play in the fourth quarter. Aiden Hutchinson, he's going after Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes gets a ball out. Hutchinson takes 2 steps and drills him. Easy roughing the passer call. It goes for 15 yards. They just couldn't get out of their own way. And I do have to say, I understand why Lions fans are frustrated. The reputation that the Chiefs have when it comes to officiating. And 1 week after having 13 accepted penalties called on them, the Chiefs have 0 accepted penalties in today's game.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a fair point to make. But again, and I don't think you're saying that the refs are the reason at all. But I think the refs are low on the reasons of why. Yeah, I could think of probably 3 or 4 things before I get to the officiating.
Yeah, it's not the reason they lost the game, but it didn't.
It didn't help. Certainly didn't
help. So then the game ends. What do we got to talk about before the game ends? So talk about the hobbled secondary. Mahomes was great today. Yeah. The pass rush, it just wasn't getting home. It was kind of getting in the backfield and getting him to do some certain things. But unlike the Baltimore game, linebackers weren't able to close in on him. They weren't able to force him into bad decisions. There were plenty of times where, Mahomes had nowhere to go with the ball, defender closing in, and he just got rid of it. And I feel like that was stuff that frequently against Baltimore a few weeks ago, they were actually capitalizing on those opportunities, bringing them to the ground, things like that. He was 22 for 30, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 132.2, 3 sacks in this game. Which I thought it was only 2, to be quite honest with you. But
the reason, because I thought it was only 2 as well, is they changed the Jack Campbell tackle for no gain to a sack.
Okay. Well, there you go. So yeah, and every time he got the ball out of his hand, there were plenty of time. You talked about the quick game. There were I won't say just as many, but like there was no happy medium. There was not a lot of like intermediate gains where it was just like in rhythm, drop back, hitch, hit the passer.
Sure.
It was either quick game or the lines were forcing him to scramble, run around, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that guy's wide open.
Yeah.
And you brought up the point. There was one touchdown in particular, the dagger to Hollywood Brown, where they got a bunch formation on the left side of the line, or the left side of the whatever formation, and then Hollywood Brown just kind of runs a drag route across, like 3 Lions players go to Jack Campbell, and he's just wide open for the touchdown.
Yeah, to Travis Kelce. It appeared that Jack Campbell, Meek Robertson, and Kirby Joseph all went to Travis Kelce, and I'm not going to pretend to know who was should have followed Hollywood Brown, but I can guarantee
somebody should have.
One of those 3 guys should not have been on Travis Kelce. I can say that confidently.
Yeah. And then, of course, the game ends in some controversy. If you turn it off before this, Brian Branch got into a fight with Juju Smith-Schuster, Chiefs wide receiver. So after the game ended, Mahomes took the final knee. Branch crosses the line of scrimmage. Mahomes is like put his hands out to dap him up. Branch walks right past him and just open hand smushes, smacks, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Juju Smith-Schuster knocks him to the ground. Isaiah Pacheco comes over, kind of engages with Branch. Then Juju Smith-Schuster runs back over and tries to like hit both of them at the same time. He actually hit Pacheco, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And somehow Branch gets a hold of him while engaged with Pacheco and just like straight tosses him onto the ground. Scrum ensues. Both teams kind of rush to break it up.
Broderick Martin in the middle breaking it up for the record. Now on the Chiefs practice squad.
After the game, he basically you can tell us what he said, but Dan Campbell basically opening his post-game press conference by addressing it, saying that's not acceptable, that's not who we are. I apologize to Coach Reed and the Chiefs and stuff like that. So interesting to see what comes of that, because it was an open hand face strike or an open hand strike, but at the same time, he does have a reputation. I think he's probably, like, without double checking, easily the most fine line over the last 2 seasons. He's been ejected for targeting. Like he has things on his record that I wonder how they will affect the punishment.
For sure. Yeah. It feels like, and maybe I'm glossing over the Packers ejection. It feels like for as much as he has had these unsportsmanlike conduct penalties or these unnecessary roughness penalties, that the league really hasn't come down on him yet. Like I think of Derwin James last year. He stacked up a few unnecessary roughness, and then the league came down on him and suspended him for a game. The NFL really hasn't done that with Branch, apart from the early ejection at Lambeau last year. So I do think there is real fear that like maybe something could happen.
And this is a bad game for that to happen. Coming up against Tampa Bay.
Absolutely.
They got weapons. They got a good quarterback. And Kirby Joseph clearly playing through the pain back here, in addition to the 2 corners.
Right. And I know the Bucs are some of their weapons are hobbled. We'll talk about the Bucs sometime next week. But in terms of what Branch said, one, he got asked about, like, do you anticipate discipline from the league? And he was like, I don't know, to be honest with you. If you've ever seen or heard a Brian Branch press conference, you would not think that human is the same human that gets into fights and throws Tucker Kraft's helmet and hit Bo Melton so hard that he got ejected from the game, and then does that today with the fight with Juju Smith-Schuster. You would not think it's the same human, and it was kind of the same thing in this post-game locker room. He did explain why he did what he did. He said that towards the end of the game, Juju Smith-Schuster blocked him in the back, and the refs didn't call a flag, or didn't call a penalty, didn't throw a flag. And he said it frustrated him because he was like, guys do stuff like that. He said, quote, I think people try to bully me. And he was like, the refs didn't do anything about it. I could have gotten hurt on that play, and like no one did anything. So that's why he grew frustrated. But he was also like extremely apologetic. He called it a childish thing. He was like, I shouldn't have done it. Like very much owned it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, the reputation in the first 6 weeks of the season, it's already twice now that he, like I said, tossed Tucker Kraft's helmet, did this.
Yeah. In his defense, the block in the back that he took from Juju Smith-Schuster was vicious. Like he was like clearly coming in, not really trying to impact the play.
Almost like holding contain.
And it was vicious, but again, no excuses. One more thing I did want to touch on. Taylor Decker did not play in this game tonight. Neither did Giovanni Manu. Since the last time that we've talked to you on the Gridiron Gang podcast, Giovanni Manu has been placed on injured reserve with a knee injury. So that'll be something to monitor going forward. Dan Skipper out there starting at left tackle today. He's done it before, started a few games last year, 3 games I think it was. I'm sure this was kind of similar to last week where like down in, down out, it didn't seem to be a problem. But I'm curious to watch the tape, see how it affected Jared Goff, because there were definitely times where he was under pressure a little bit. And then late in the game, I can't remember which drive it was. I think they were down by 10. I think it was 27-17, where it kind of finally started to rear its ugly head. Tate Ratledge got beat by I can't remember who, but Goff evades the guy who beat Tate Ratledge, but then Charles Omenihu who easily beat Dan Skipper, and he was right there to clean it up. So didn't affect him too bad on like a overall basis. Like I didn't feel like Goff looked uncomfortable out there, but I do feel like Taylor Decker being out there in the second half when they are just having to drop back and throw pretty much every play would have made a little bit of a difference. Again, it's all a moot point at this point anyways, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, for sure. I think having Taylor Decker would help. I would say without rewatching the game, Skipper was probably better than Manu from last week. But I don't say that confidently because, like I said, you can only glean so much from up here.
And when you don't allow the splash plays, right? The strip sack, the
blind
vicious
side.
blind side. Yeah. And even on that one sack that I was just referring to, like if Tate picks up the blitzer, maybe that play looks a little bit different. So who knows?
We should probably touch on Kirby Joseph too. This knee thing, it was a problem already, and problem already, double problem now. Like it's just the fact that this is the second time in 3 weeks, because it was against the Browns a couple weeks ago that he left the game early, then came back in the second half. He leaves this game with 12 minutes remaining in the second quarter. He's like sitting. I honestly I didn't really see what happened or what triggered the knee injury that he's been dealing with throughout training camp and then into the start of the season. But he's slow to get up. He's sitting on the field for a while. Then he does get up, very slowly makes his way off with his arms around the trainers, gets to the bench, sits on the bench, and then they pop up the blue medical tent for him, which is probably like 30 yards away from where he's sitting. That was the slowest I've ever seen a player move from the bench to the medical tent.
Minutes.
He was like taking a few steps, stopping, taking a few steps, stopping. And I was like, dude, like, he's got to be in a lot of pain. And then he goes in the medical tent. They treat him. They do whatever they do to him in there. Then he comes out. He's gingerly walking back and forth behind the bench with a towel on his head. Then he starts lightly jogging. Then he's on the bike. Long story short, 10 minutes later, after the 2-minute warning, he checks back into the game. But he's very clearly playing hurt. And Dan Campbell kind of talked about it. You could probably touch on this better than me. That, in a perfect world, maybe he would, it would serve him well to sit out a week, but they really they can't afford to do that.
Right. It's not like the offensive line where you can rest Taylor Decker and go, okay, well, we got 4 guys that we really, really trust. And if we can just, figure out a way to patch this up for a few games, then we can be good long-term. Whereas on the back end of things, we mentioned the corners being out. We mentioned, Branch is one bad play away from tweaking the ankle injury that kept him on the injury report, made him a game time decision today. So yeah, I completely agree. And they basically said it's like a similar outlook to Taylor Decker's injury, where they don't think that playing is going to make it any worse, but it's like extremely painful. It's definitely something that is impacting him on just about every play, but they do believe if they can just get him a game or 2 off, which, we'll count the bye week as a game off, that he can kind of hit a new
reset.
Yeah, reset and be able to go for the rest of the season. So we'll keep an eye on that as that evolves. But yeah, I completely agree. They could not have afforded to have him or to not have him out here tonight. We saw how things went with him on the field. So yeah.
That'll do it.
All right. Thanks for listening. Go to DetroitNews.com for all post-game coverage. And we're going to be spinning it forward to next week's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in just a few short days. Nolan Bianchi, Richard Silva. Thanks for listening and watching, whatever you do.